My name is Nishat Noor and welcome to Millennium Headlines. This week's top headlines are: Kerry visits Egypt seeking aid in ISIS fight. U.S. scientists see long fight against Ebola. Putin intent on taking all of Ukraine, Premier says. Past to war, then and now, haunt Obama. A trial concludes, but for South Africans, the debate may be just starting. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina inaugurated the Secretariat of the Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and Prime Minister Narendra Modi likely to meet on UNJ sidelines. Secretary of State John Kerry received broad assurance but no public commitments from Egypt on Saturday as he continued his tour on the Middle East to try to assemble a coalition behind American campaign against the extremist group known as the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria.
Secretary of State John Kerry received broad assurance but no public commitments from Egypt on Saturday as he continued his tour of the Middle East to try to assemble a coalition behind an American campaign against the extremist group known as the ISIS, or Islamic State in Iraq and Syria.
The only way to eliminate the ISIL threat is by building a global coalition that will support the Iraqi government across a number of critical efforts, including by providing military support, but also, importantly, because this won't be done by military alone, importantly, humanitarian aid by addressing the illicit funding streams that come to ISIL. Egypt has a critical role to play in publicly renouncing the ideology that ISIL disseminates. I am convinced from our meetings today and over the last week, it will be our goal in every meeting that we have on the international basis, together, working to degrade and ultimately to defeat ISIL.
In Baghdad, meanwhile, the new prime minister took a small step toward alleviating the deep alienation that has made some in Sunni Muslim minority receptive to ISIS. He said that he had ordered the Iraqi security forces to stop the indiscriminate shelling of civilian communities under the control of the militants. Together, the professions of good intentions in Baghdad and Cairo underscored the long road ahead for the Obama administration as it tries to assemble a regional coalition to roll back and dismantle ISIS. Millennium TV, Naeem Mohammed.
The deadly Ebola outbreak sweeping across 3 countries in West Africa is likely to last 12 to 18 months more, much longer than anticipated, and could infect hundreds of thousands of people before it is brought under control, say scientists mapping its spread for the federal government.
The deadly Ebola outbreak sweeping across 3 countries in West Africa is likely to last 12 to 18 months more, much longer than anticipated, and could infect hundreds of thousands of people before it is brought under control. We hope we are wrong, said Brian Lewis, an epidemiologist at the Virginia Bioinformatics Institute at Virginia Tech. Both the time the model says it will take to control the epidemic and the number of cases it forecast far exceeded estimates by the World Health Organization, which said last month that it hoped to control the outbreak within 9 months and predicted 20,000 total cases by that time. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention declined to comment on the projections. A spokesman, Thomas Skinner, said that the agency was doing its own modeling and hoped to publish the results soon. But CDC Director Dr. Thomas R. Frieden has warned repeatedly that the epidemic is worsening, described it as spiraling out of control. Millennium TV, Naeem Mohammed.
A week into a fragile ceasefire between government troops and pro-Russian rebels in Ukraine, that country's prime minister offered a pessimistic assessment of its chances of holding and said President Vladimir Putin of Russia intends eventually to conquer all of Ukraine.
A week into a fragile ceasefire between government troops and pro-Russian rebels in Ukraine, that country's prime minister offered a pessimistic assessment of its chances of holding and said President Vladimir Putin of Russia intends eventually to conquer all of Ukraine.
Russia is the threat to the global order and to the security and stability in the entire Europe. At the first stage, he decided to annex Crimea. At the second one, he wants to build up a frozen conflict in Donetsk and Lugansk. At the third one, he wants to facilitate the corridor from Donetsk, Lugansk to Kherson, Odessa, and Transnistria. And at the fourth one, he wants to eliminate Ukraine as an independent country. This is my take on this. So the idea is to say it bluntly and clearly that NATO, in these particular circumstances, is the only vehicle how to protect and defend Ukraine. I do understand that not all NATO members were happy with this kind of statement. But my job is to make happy the people of Ukraine.
Only the military backing of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization can defend Ukraine, the Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk told a conference of security experts in Kiev. Mr. Yatsenyuk reiterated his support voiced in the summer for the unlikely eventuality of Ukraine's joining NATO. This was a shift from his position and that of others in pro-Western coalition that came to power after a street protest last winter and illustrates a hardening of anti-Russia sentiment in the Ukrainian elite after months of war. The Prime Minister had previously said that NATO membership was not on the agenda for Kiev in an effort to assuage concerns of Russian speakers in Ukraine and Russia. Millennium TV, I'm Mohammed.
Just hours before announcing an escalated campaign against Islamic extremists last week, President Obama privately reflected on another time when a president weighed military action in the Middle East. The frenzied weeks leading up to the American invasion of Iraq a decade ago.
As Commander-in-Chief, my highest priority is the security of the American people. And I've made it clear that those who threaten the United States will find no safe haven. Thanks to our military and counterterrorism professionals, we took out Osama bin Laden, much of al-Qaeda's leadership in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and leaders of al-Qaeda affiliates in Yemen and Somalia. We've prevented terrorist attacks, saved American lives, and made our homeland more secure. Today, the terrorist threat is more diffuse from al-Qaeda affiliates and other extremists, like ISIL in Syria and Iraq. As I said this week, our intelligence community has not yet detected specific ISIL plots against our homeland, but its leaders have repeatedly threatened the United States. And if left unchecked, these terrorists could pose a growing threat beyond the Middle East, including to the United States. So we're staying vigilant, and we're moving ahead with our strategy to degrade and ultimately destroy this terrorist organization. To meet a threat like this, we have to be smart. We have to use our power wisely. And we have to avoid the mistakes of the past. American military power is unmatched, but this can't be America's fight alone. And the best way to defeat a group like ISIL isn't by sending a large number of American combat forces to wage a ground war in the heart of the Middle East. That wouldn't serve our interests. In fact, it would only risk fueling extremism even more. What's needed now is a targeted, relentless counterterrorism campaign against ISIL that combines American air power, contributions from allies and partners, and more support to forces that are fighting these terrorists on the ground. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're moving ahead with our campaign of airstrikes against these terrorists, and we're prepared to take action against ISIL in Syria as well. The additional American forces I've ordered to Iraq will help Iraqi and Kurdish forces with the training, intelligence, and equipment they need to take the fight to these terrorists on the ground. We're working with Congress to expand our efforts to train and equip the Syrian opposition. We'll continue to strengthen our defenses here at home, and we'll keep providing the humanitarian relief to help Iraqi civilians who have been driven from their homes and who remain in extreme danger. Because we're leading the right way, more nations are joining our coalition. This week, Arab nations agreed to strengthen their support for the new Iraqi government and to do their part in the fight against ISIL, including aspects of the military campaign. Saudi Arabia will join the effort to help train and equip moderate Syrian opposition forces. And retired Marine General John Allen, who during the Iraq War worked with Sunnis in Iraq as they fought to reclaim their communities from terrorists, will serve as our special envoy to help build and coordinate our growing coalition. Today, every American can be proud of our men and women in uniform who are serving in this effort. When our airstrikes helped break the siege of the Iraq town of Amerli, one Kurdish fighter on the ground said, "It would have been absolutely impossible without the American planes." One resident of that city said, "Thank you, America." Today, we're showing the world the best of American leadership. We will protect our people. We will stand with partners who defend their countries and rally other nations to meet a common threat. And here at home, 13 years after our country was attacked, we continue to stand tall and proud because we are Americans and we do not give in to fear. We carry on and we will never waver in the defense of the country.
Mohammed, Millennium TV.
The murder trial of the Paralympic star Oscar Pistorius lurched to a close on Friday when he was convicted of a culpable homicide in the shooting death last year of his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp. But in a case that reflected South Africa's complicated obsession with race, crime, and celebrity, many South Africans found understanding the verdict to be as difficult as trying to fathom exactly what was in Mr. Pistorius's mind the night he pulled the trigger.
The murder trial of the Paralympic star Oscar Pistorius came to a close on Friday when he was convicted of a culpable homicide in the shooting death last year of his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp, but in a case that reflected South Africa's complicated obsession with rape, crime, and celebrity. Many South Africans found understanding the verdict to be as difficult as trying to fathom exactly what was in Mr. Pistorius' mind the night he pulled the trigger. It is unclear yet whether Mr. Pistorius, who was acquitted of the two more serious murder charges against him, will do time in jail. The sentence for culpable homicide, a crime roughly commensurate with involuntary manslaughter, is left to the discretion of the judge and can range from no jail time to, in the most extreme case, 15 years in prison. Lawyer says that often the sentences are very light. Completing her two-day reading of the verdict on Friday, Judge Thokozile Matilda Masipa scheduled the sentencing hearing for October 13th, and over the angry objections of the prosecutor, Gary Nell granted bail to Mr. Pistorius until then. Millennium TV, Naeem Mohammed.
Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on Saturday inaugurated the Secretariat of the Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation.
Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on Saturday inaugurated the Secretariat of the Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectorial Technical and Economic Cooperation. The BIMS TAC Secretariat, located in the city's Goshen 2 area, is the first headquarters of any intergovernmental organization in Bangladesh, and the government considers the establishment of its secretariat here as its great diplomatic achievement.
এই অঞ্চলে বিশ্বের 1/5-এরও বেশি মানুষ বাস করে। সংশ্লিষ্ট দেশগুলোর সম্মিলিত জিডিপির পরিমাণ প্রায় 2.7 ট্রিলিয়ন মার্কিন ডলার। এখানে রয়েছে প্রচুর প্রাকৃতিক সম্পদ, যার সুষ্ঠু ব্যবহারের মাধ্যমে এই অঞ্চলের জনগণের জীবনমান সহ আর্থ-সামাজিক ব্যবস্থার ব্যাপক উন্নয়ন করা সম্ভব, কারণ অধিকাংশ দরিদ্র মানুষও এই অঞ্চলেই বসবাস করে। বাণিজ্য চুক্তিটি চূড়ান্ত পর্যায়ে থাকলেও সেবা খাতে বাণিজ্য বিনিয়োগ সংরক্ষণ সংক্রান্ত চুক্তিগুলো প্রাথমিক পর্যায়ে রয়ে গেছে। এই চুক্তিগুলো দ্রুত সম্পন্ন করা এবং এই অঞ্চলের অর্থনৈতিক সংহতির ক্ষেত্রে গুরুত্বপূর্ণ ভূমিকা যাতে রাখতে পারে সে পদক্ষেপ দ্রুত নিতে হবে। বিমস্টেকের আওতাধীন হিমালয় বেসিন অঞ্চলে জলবিদ্যুৎ এবং বঙ্গোপসাগর অঞ্চলে হাইড্রোকার্বন প্রাপ্তির অপার সম্ভাবনা রয়েছে। এই সম্ভাবনাকে কাজে লাগিয়ে এই অঞ্চলের জ্বালানি নিরাপত্তা বৃদ্ধির জন্য আমাদেরকে ঐক্যবদ্ধভাবে কাজ করে যেতে হবে।
BIMS TAC was established on June 6, 1997 in Bangkok, and it started its journey with only 4 participating members and 6 areas of cooperation. Presently, it has 7 member states: Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Myanmar, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Thailand, and 14 areas of cooperation. Millennium TV, Naeem Mohammed.
Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is expected to hold first meeting with her Indian counterpart Narendra Modi on September 27th on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly in New York.
Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is expected to hold first meeting with her Indian counterpart Prime Minister Narendra Modi on September 27th on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly in New York. Officials familiar with the process had earlier said both the prime ministers are set to deliver their speeches in UN General Assembly on the same day, and they were to hold the meeting after their addresses. Foreign Minister A.H. Mahmood Ali is set to travel to New Delhi to join the Joint Consultative Commission meeting on September 20th with Indian counterpart Sushma Swaraj, who made her first stand-alone foreign tour to Dhaka in June. Soon after the BJP-led coalition on the elections, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, in her congratulatory message to Modi, said, "I am delighted to see a great friend of Bangladesh leading an extremely friendly country, India, in the coming days." Millennium TV, Naeem Mohammed.
Thank you for watching Millennium Headlines, and we will see you next week.